what's going on? I was just getting in an argument, with a friend today over not having seen any movies. I've seen hardly any movies, and I know we're in Los Angeles, and everyone has seen every fucking movie that's ever existed. But I'm sorry, I have not, and I have good reason. My parents owned a business when I was growing up, so I was providing free slave labor for them. Not a whole lot of time to see movies when you're shoveling gravel at 9 years old. It was nice. It was good. It was a good experience. I'm from a really small town in Indiana called Cedar Lake. I'm sorry if you've been there. It's a real shithole. They allow slave labor there for children. A lot of my friends, because I'm from a small town, in small town America, like, most of my friends growing up, like, they were the only people in their family to go away and go to college, you know, which is a really cool thing to say, like, be like, I was the first one to go to college, you know, and I'm sure some of you in this room have that story that's very common of small towns. Both of my parents went to college, so I couldn't say that. However, I'm the only one in my entire family, 3 brothers, tons of cousins, aunts, uncles. I'm the only one who's never been arrested, you guys. Thank you. Thank you. It's like being the only person to not have AIDS in your family. Do you understand? It's like in my blood. I don't know how I avoided it. Even my grandmother, you guys, my grandma, when she was sick, she got really sick for a while, and she couldn't make it to church, and so the priest literally came to her house and held service in her yard. This is like the kind of woman she is, and she had been arrested for running an illegal gambling ring out of the bar she owned. So yeah, it's the kind of people I am related to. Basically, I'm a saint. That's what I'm trying to say. Basically, the best person in this room. Sorry. I'm kidding. I recently had an uncle die, which is great. It's really nice. It's good because my family like never really gave me anything, and now I have this bit, you know? It's like, finally something. He died alone, which I think is nice, you know? It's really the only way you can die with any dignity, you know? If you die alone, nobody's there just to see your body rotting away. Like, people always say, oh, I want to be surrounded by loved ones. Like, who has time to gather? You're just gathering people, and you're in the hospital, and your body's rotting away, and people are watching that. That's a horrific thing. I'd rather just go out alone immediately, like in one fell swoop. You know, if you're in the hospital dying, some of you have seen this. Some of you have watched other people die. I'm just going to take the energy in the room, and I'm just going to drive it into the ground. That's my plan. But you know, when somebody's dying in the hospital, it's always weird and awkward, and you're like, I don't want to remember them like this. They look terrible, they smell worse. And then their last moment, they just like reach their icy hand out to touch you one last time, and they just shut themselves and die. And that's it. So what I'm saying is, die alone, die with dignity, you know? Shit yourself by yourself. That's my slogan. I'm running in 2016. Look for it. Look for it. And then Uncle, when he died, he had like strict orders. He was like, absolutely no funeral, because he said it was a waste of time and money. Which I agree, because funerals are hella expensive and they're almost never fun. Like, almost never. With the exception of, like, if somebody dies really young. One of my best friends died in high school, and he was a big Rage Against the Machine fan, so his family blasted Rage Against the Machine at his funeral. That was a great funeral, you guys. I would go again. I would go again tonight, do you understand? It was so fun. I don't feel bad for my Uncle Al, who died alone, because he burned down 2 of his own homes to collect on insurance, you guys. It was never in the cards for him to die with someone. Do you understand? He was always going to die alone. Oddly, that's the most financial planning I've ever gotten from my family. That's the most. My parents sold a business and then lost a business. So Al came out on top. Good math. Turns out that's the best way to get rid of a shitty neighbor, you guys. You burn down their house and you get an extra acre. It's a win-win situation. Do you understand, like, I don't need to go to church, I'm a fucking saint. Do you see? Oddly, being in me the piece of shit of the family. You wouldn't you wouldn't think that me just being here makes me a terrible person and horrible words that I'm not going to say up here. When my Uncle Al died, because I'm not going to let this go, by the way, this is the running theme, is death one of the sins? When my Uncle Al died, my mom was the one who called me to tell me about it. And like, she hated my Uncle Al, okay? It was my dad's brother that died. He was my dad's best friend. They had dinner together every night, watched reruns of Gunsmoke together. Because that's all that's on TV in Indiana is Gunsmoke and the Bass Channel, which is an entire channel devoted to only bass fishing, you guys. It's not even like other fish, it's just bass fishing. Just bass fishing. One time I was home, this is like, I wasn't even gonna talk about this, but one time I was home. And I was at my brother's and we're sitting in the living room watching the Bass Channel, as you do. And there was like this competition on. It was like this big yearly competition on the Bass Channel for bass fishing. And for the first time ever in history, you guys, they had a woman in the bass fishing competition. It was really amazing. Right? It was really great. And they're showing the woman on the boat, and she's talking about how she used to fish with her dad and so forth. And they cut away from her, and they cut to a montage, okay? It's so good. The montage goes, like many other great firsts before her. And I'm like, oh shit, I don't know shit about bass fishing. What's going on? What's this gonna be? And they're like Neil Armstrong. And I was like, I'm sorry. What? Well, I guess technically, like, he's the first person on the moon, she's the, whatever, I'll let it go. Fine, they go through this whole Neil Armstrong montage. They're like, then they list the next person who she is also very much like Jackie Robinson. I was like, I'm sorry, I cannot endorse this. And I look over and my brother's nodding like, yeah, just like the first black man in baseball. Very similar barriers. Do you understand? That's the most insane. Some woman in a bass fishing competition, and then they cut back to her and she's crying. And as a joke, because my family's all a bunch of sexists, as a joke, I say to my brother, I go, now she's crying. And I swear to you, on everything, the commentator goes, oh, now she's crying. I was like, all right, cool, man, cool. So anyway, my dad's best friend died. His best friend and his brother. Just a terrible person, you guys. She did not like my Uncle Al, but she like needed that sympathy from me, you know? And we all know people that do this. They're 10 times removed from the situation and they want to tell you how they were almost attached somehow. Like, people do this with 9/11 all the time and it blows my fucking mind. Like, anytime 9/11 comes up, some asshole in the room is like, yeah man, I almost died 9/11. And you're like, oh my God. Shit, man, did you live in New York? Did you work in the building? What? Were you supposed to be on that flight? Every time they're like, nah, man, actually I was in Tampa, but I had a flight to Houston the following week, so it's like, you never know. Actually, sometimes you do know. Sometimes you just fucking know. Sometimes it's not a close call at all. It's a whole thing with like math and science, and forget it. We'll explain some other time. So as soon as I hung up with my mom, I called my dad. I want to make sure he's okay, obviously. I'm not a monster. I told you guys I'm the only one who hasn't been arrested. I'm the only fucking person worth a damn in my family. Can't wait for them to see this. What's up, family? Thanks for never visiting. So I call my dad. I want to make sure he's all right. And he picks up the phone and he's like, hey, what's up, kid? I was like, oh, fuck. I'm like, this is a trap. Like, my mom set me up, obviously. She's calling and she wants me to call my dad and tell him. She doesn't want to tell him. Great. Real nice, huh? I was like, oh no, shit, how am I going to tell him? And I was like, I just got off the phone with mom. And he's like, yep. I was like, oh God. She told me about Uncle Al? Like, it's a question? Like, who's not alive your brother. And he goes, yeah? And I was like, oh, son of a bitch. He doesn't know. Just like getting sick. I was like, She told me he's dead? And my dad goes, yeah, that's what happens, kid. You get old, you die. And I was like, oh, okay, what? Excuse me? My dad goes, yeah, what do you want me to do about it, Lise? I was like, I don't know, man, I was calling him a fucking seance. I thought maybe I could come for you, you weirdo. He's like, yeah, that's what happens, Lisa. He was old. I'm like, yeah, God, fuck, I'm sorry for bringing it up. Shit, the man's been dead 2 hours. Here I am, I can't stop bringing it up. What kind of asshole am I? God, my family does not deal with death very well. Last summer I was on the phone with my dad, and I was like, hey, how's Aunt Ruth? And he goes, what? And I'm like, oh great, he's losing his hearing. And I'm like, Ruth, your sister, Ruth, how is she? And he's like, Lisa, she's been dead for years. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry for fucking prying. I thought maybe you could throw that in there when you're telling me your high school wrestling story for the 10th time. Like, hey, by the way, did I tell you my sister Ruth? She's dead. Anyway, I won the match. Got high on mescaline that weekend, wound up in a ditch. Thanks, Dad. Thanks. I just wish my family could get together and send out a fucking mailer every year, you know? Like, instead of Christmas cheer, it could just be like a listing of who's in jail now, who's dead now. Here's Joe's address in jail, give him a call. Cassie's pregnant. Nope, she's not 20 yet. Oh man, you guys, my family's pretty great. You see, kind of the best person here. I'll end on something fun so that you guys aren't like thinking about suicide the rest of the night. I'm not looking forward to death at all, I know. It seems like it may be. I am looking forward to old age though, because you can get away with some shit when you get old. You know, like, if some 40-year-old man cuts you off in line at Target, you're like, hey, excuse me, sir, excuse me, I was here, I have my cart, there's like cart placement, you can see there's a line situation happening. But if like an 80-year-old man cuts you in line, you're like, oh, yes, sir, please, may I buy that for you? Can I carry you to your car? I do need anything. Do you need a hug? Your whole family's probably dead. Or at least your friends, at the very least, all of your friends are dead. Like, life sucks for that guy. So you let him go. It doesn't matter what, like, even I've seen like, this is gonna be very revealing about me, but whenever they do the news stories, they're like, Nazi found, 97 years old, he's in Ohio. I'm like, for God's sakes, I mean, just let the man fucking die. Yeah, he aided in killing 6 million Jews, but he's got, what, 3 days left? Please, what are we gonna start a court case? Give me a fucking break. Like, old people can do anything they want. They like shit their pants and people are like, it's fine. They probably couldn't control it. They probably can. They just don't care. Don't give a fuck. You know, like when you get old and you shrink and you shrivel up and you're just like a tiny little prune of a human, I can't wait for that. I'm gonna shave my head and I'm gonna wrap myself in a towel and make my grandkids reenact E.T., you know? Be like, put me in your mic basket, Elliot, and take me to the grocery store. They're like, oh, Grandma, get your gross finger away from me. My name's not Elliot. I'm like, whatever, Elliot, pedal faster. That's it for me, you guys.